so good luck, have fun, don't die, is the latest film from Gore Verbinski. And he has such a high energy here that I think just the sheer momentum with how he directs this very bonkers sci-fi satire, I think works really well in spite of the script by Matthew Robinson, who has previously written scripts like Love and Monsters and Monster Trucks, which are fairly mindless, kind of like genre type pictures that are like they're weird and they're quirky, but I feel like the directors, when they approach that material, they kind of like just fall back on like the weirdness of it all to carry it. And thankfully, Gore Verbinski doesn't. I think he has a firm enough grip on this type of story that he just plows forward with it. Like, he just takes the script and just goes for it, tries to find like the most wild stuff he can put on screen, tries to keep the energy high, make it eccentric, make it weird, make it bizarre. You really need to keep up that spirit, because honestly, this is not a script that I found all that impressive. So the premise starts off fairly well. You have Sam Rockwell playing this time traveler who has come back into the past to save our future by defeating this evil artificial intelligence, and he needs a group of people at a diner to help him with this task. And I love how the film doesn't really set it up as much as it does just kind of like drop us right in, where Sam Rockwell's character is not on his first try. Like this is on like maybe, a few dozen tries in. So you kind of have like a live, die, repeat going on here, but it's like dropping you right into the middle of it. And I love how the film just hits the ground running, where you have Sam Rockwell just enter this diner all like full of himself. Like, yeah, I've been here many, many times, and he's all bearded. He looks nutty. He's got like this very clunky like time travel device with all these like exposed wires and everything. And I love just his attitude, where he like talks about everybody. It's like, oh yeah, I've done this a million times. I know everything about you, and just has like this very cocky swagger, the way that he kind of tries to navigate trying to defeat this evil AI and rely on these other folks to make that happen. And there are like some fairly quirky characters that he hooks up with here. Like you have Haley Lou Richardson playing Ingrid, who shows up in a princess dress, which you find out later why she is that way. You have Michael Pena and Zazie Beetz as this couple who is like a little bit distant. Like, it feels like they had a relationship once, but it's kind of like withered as the years have went on. And then you have some odd other characters here played by Azim Chaudhry and Tom Taylor, Juno Temple. All of these characters, they have their own little weird quirks to them. They don't really develop them too much. And this is a big problem with the film, is that it always feels like this entire group doesn't so much affect the story as they are just kind of like passengers along for the ride. They're just present to gawk at all the weirdness that happens as they try to travel to this house and defeat this evil AI. Because the film is very surreal and odd, and I think somebody else pointed this out, that probably the best descriptor of this film is that it kind of feels like a little bit more like a Terry Gilliam film. And it very much is, because it's like it's all over the place. It takes wild and weird twists that don't quite connect. It veers off course many times, but it also kind of reminded me of just like a very big mash of Black Mirror episodes, and that becomes more present as the film is non-linear and it focuses on a few other characters before they arrived at the diner. So like you have like Michael Pena and Zazie Beetz. They're both teachers who work at the school in which they encounter teenagers who become zombies with their phones. You have Ingrid, who has an allergy to technology, which kind of plays a role in destroying a relationship with her. And then probably one of the most interesting backstories here is the one for Juno Temple as Susan, who loses a son to a school shooting and tries to get him cloned, but he ends up being a little bit more of an advertisement among parents who have gone through this many times before. And it's like the commentary it's not subtle here, which I don't mind. It's just like it always kind of felt like, though, that it was just one note of commentary here. But I do kind of like how all these, like, because like you have like stories about phones turning teenagers into zombies, and school shootings not being dealt with, and how people who are adverse to tech find it hard to navigate the world. It feels like a collection of half-thought Black Mirror episodes that have just been like fused together to try to make this grand story about stopping an artificial intelligence. And I think just the whole assembly of it, I think, is more admirable than how well it connects, because it still does kind of feel like these half-thought cliches, like, you know, the whole sequence at the high school with like the teenagers manipulated by their phones. Like, okay, yeah, I get it, you know, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they're on their phones too much and it turns them into zombies. Like, but thankfully we only spend a little bit of time on that, and they kind of use it as an ingredient for the rest of this bizarre sci-fi story. I also appreciate how the backstories kind of set up the weirdness that follows, because a lot of like odd stuff that isn't quite explained just keeps happening as the film goes on. Like, they encounter weird gunmen that you never really learn why they're attacking until later on. The artificial intelligence it's personified through like a creepy 9-year-old boy who, you know, when they find this character, they of course talk with this AI and like this digital environment. It talks about how, you know, the kid talks about how humanity is doomed and I can make a better world for you. And it's all this, I've heard all this before, and it's like, it's not that impressive. What is impressive, however, I think, is just the spirit and the charm of the characters that I think came through very well here. Like, I thought I would grow tired of Sam Rockwell's knowing nature and how he tries to like approach this very dangerous situation where not everybody is going to survive this journey. But honestly, it didn't wear down for me. I think I enjoyed him enough that even when the film was presented these very like familiar and kind of like dusty ideas on technology, which, like I said, it feels like a bunch of Black Mirror episodes, I think just his charm really came through, and the charm of the other characters too. Like, I really liked Haley Lou Richardson. I think she was a very interesting character. I think she has a lot at stake. She has a lot of anger, a lot of despair in her, and wants to have a chance to prove herself. Where I thought she was really compelling. The sexual tension between Michael Pena and Zazie Beetz, I think was like a little bit forced, and I think that's mostly just because there's not a lot of time spent with them. But I mean, there's not really a lot of time spent with most of the characters. But while we do get to spend a lot of time with Ingrid and her personal thoughts about technology and her backstory, the backstory with Mark and Janet, who are, you know, Michael Pena and Zazie Beetz' character, it never felt like there was enough time with them. It always felt like it had to highlight the dark comedic nature of how high schools have transformed, where the teachers have no control, school shootings are a regular thing, how they have no control over the phones. In fact, the phones have more control over the teachers than they think they do. There was never enough time to get to appreciate that dynamic between them. Not to mention a lot of the characters who they all just kind of end up just being very simplistic in their quirks, but in a way that I think is serviceable enough for a film where it really does want to highlight a lot of like the darkly comedic violence and the absurdity of the end times and the twisty nature of artificial intelligence the more that it goes along. And I think that works for the film by always keeping it a little bit twisty. I usually hate that aspect of like a Terry Gilliam film where it's just throwing all the weirdness at the wall, and some of it sticks and some of it doesn't. I think just the speed at which Verbinski just throws everything that he wants into this film. Like, there are bizarre scenes of like a sentient AI using like a tornado of wires to attack, and there's like there's AI infused toys that go on the offensive and they wield knives. There's a bizarre suburban family that goes on the attack. There's hordes of zombie teenagers. There's this weird cat monster towards the end of the film that just kind of feels like an amalgamation of a whole bunch of memes, which the film even kind of admits like it kind of is that. And by the time it got to that point in the film, like, don't get me wrong, the sight is very bizarre. It's very weird, and it's very gross, and it's very violent. But by that point in the film, it kind of felt par for the course, and I think that's the problem with of what happens when you just throw everything at the screen is just that at some point you become so used to it that something as bizarre as like a giant cat creature that has too many heads and eats people and vomits glitter, like that's it. Kind of like, okay, yeah, I expect it by this point. So it's a little disappointing that that the weird stuff that is shown on screen kind of becomes a little bit more stale as the film goes along. But like I said, the speed that Verbinski throws it at the screen, I think works, and the cast here is really admirable in their efforts, and I think just keeping up that spirit holds together this film where I wasn't that dismayed by all these dated ideas on tech, and not to mention a very like wishy-washy nature with how it tries to approach artificial intelligence and try to dismantle it in a way that it very much felt like a Terry Gilliam film. But also, Verbinski's own style of direction, I think, comes through a lot more here, where he is trying out a lot more stuff and just trying to like be very experimental here. It felt like he was like dipping into like a big box of all these sci-fi tropes and like just and flinging them out and seeing like, oh, what does this do? What does this do? Maybe I can tinker with this. Does this work? No. Well, how about this? And I admire that spirit. I just having that giddy nature of just saying, hey, let's try all this stuff, and we'll try to like push it all together, and hey, if it works, it works, and I think it does. I think it feels like it's very much held together with a lot of duct tape to try to make this premise work. But the cast they go a long way in making this film come together, and I think I admired them most that by the time it got to the grand finale, I was more intrigued just to see more of the characters than to see whether or not they defeat the big evil AI entity. So on that level, I really did. I enjoyed for the most part Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die, but more for its ambition, I think, than the ideas. Like there's more cleverness and charm in the characters than there is in the premise. And trying to find it doesn't really have anything all that new or interesting to say about tech. It just kind of uses all these familiar ingredients and tries to cook up something a little different, a little strange. So it's a mild recommendation for me on Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die. I think it's a very sufficient sci-fi satire.